Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 21st of March 2023. These are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of the show. We'll begin with the blockage of internet access for about 27 million people in the state of Punjab by the Indian authorities. We'll be talking about why they are afraid of one person, that is Amritpal Singh. Huge movement is going on by the Indian forces in order to arrest Amritpal Singh. Why is that happening? Why are the Sikhs not being given their due rights? Why are Sikhs being persecuted? I mean, we have talked a lot about Muslims being persecuted, and we know what happens in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir and all across India for that matter. We know the Hindutva policies and the RSS ideology of the BJP, but now that ideology slowly and steadily is extending towards other minorities, especially the Sikhs, the Dalits, and so on and so forth. But here we are going to concentrate on what is happening towards the Sikh community, what has been happening in the past as far as the Sikh community is concerned, and we'll be talking about incarcerations, we'll be talking about the manhunt that is going on and what India is trying to achieve through that. But the Sikhs as a result of all of this are asking for Khalistan, and the referendum is going on as it has happened in Australia very recently. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the gamut of relationship between Pakistan and the People's Republic of China. The third round of the Pakistan-China bilateral political consultations was recently held in Beijing. How important is this relationship that both friendly countries enjoy? How important is China's backing of Pakistan under the current geostrategic and geoeconomic outlook? And how do we foresee this relationship also developing further and strengthening further in the days to come? This is going to be our second story. We will be then talking about Teleschool application, Teleschool Pakistan application that has been launched today by our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab. It is a very important initiative for those who want to get education while being at home. And it is one of the many achievements that the current government is trying to do for further uplifting the children of Pakistan in the field, in the realm of education. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about the current account deficit that has declined by 68% to $3.8 billion during the first 8 months of the current fiscal year, from $12 billion during the same period last year. Good news, we will be ending with that. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the persecution of the Sikh community by the Indian authorities, and in the latest spate in their manhunt for Amritpal Singh. The Indian authorities have clamped down on the internet services and have denied the right to around 27 million people in the state of Punjab for a fourth straight day. That and more is happening in Sikhs and for the Sikhs, and that is why they are asking for a separate homeland for themselves in the name of Khalistan. More in the following report.
Indian assault on democratic values and civil liberties continues, and minorities are being persistently hounded under Narendra Modi government. For decades, Indian Sikhs have demanded that an independent nation called Khalistan be carved in the state of Punjab for followers of the minority faith. As Sikhs have come under attack from hardline Hindutva supporters in India, Khalistan movement is gaining momentum. Voting for second round of Khalistan referendum took place in Brisbane Convention and Exhibition Centre, Australia, and more than 11,000 Sikhs took part in the phase. Baffled by success of Khalistan referendum, Indian mercenary cyber attack attempted to interrupt voting. Meanwhile, police in India's Punjab are conducting an operation to arrest Sikh preacher Amritpal Singh. The World Sikh Organization has condemned the draconian operation to arrest Singh and said it feared Singh's detention may be used to orchestrate a false encounter and facilitate his extrajudicial murder. Indian authorities have blocked internet access for about 27 million people in the state of Punjab for a fourth straight day, one of the country's most extensive blackouts in recent years, as police search for Amritpal Singh. A report released by digital rights watchdog Access Now and the Keep It On coalition labeled India the biggest offender, as it led the global list of internet shutdowns with 84 blackouts in 2022.
Now, this persecution of the Sikh community is nothing new. We all remember Operation Blue Star in 1984, and we all know about the Khalistan movement that has been going on for quite some time, because the Sikhs are not being given their due rights in a country that they wanted to call their own, and that is why they are moving towards that avenue. To talk more about that, we've been joined by Brigadier retired WAQAR HASAN Khan. He's an analyst. He's in the studios. So thank you very much to have joined us. Sir, now that we are seeing this clampdown on internet, which reminds us so much about on the clampdown of internet of the Muslim community in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, there are a lot of similitudes in which the Indian government is targeting now the Sikh community the way they were targeting the Muslim community in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. What are they afraid of?
I think it is, you rightly pointed out, it's a strategy born out of fear. And there is a historical perspective, especially for two nations, that is Muslims and Sikhs within subcontinent India. If you recall the history, Sikhs also developed an empire, so built an empire. So they were a ruling class in Indian Punjab, and their, I think, empire went up to Kabul. So that is one. The other is the Muslim class, which was an aristocratic class, and mainly there is a fear that probably in case they start exerting like the Kashmiri Muslims, then there will be problem for, let's say, the Brahman Raj. So I would say one reason is that they are basically afraid of, although Sikhs do not form a large portion of or proportion of Indian population, including the diaspora, it's something like, I think, 30 million, which is not very big. But I think the strategy.
They are a very important part of the Indian community and the Indian population.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they're not in a majority.
Yeah, and they are very enterprising people. Especially if you look at the diaspora, they are doing very well economically. Even if you look at defense forces, Sikhs form basically a major part of as far as the population is concerned. So one, it is born out of fear. The other is after partition, or let's say independence, the Sikhs were not given their identity, as a Sikh community. So it was basically they were declared as Hindus. If you look at the constitution, they are not a separate entity. So that is one major thing which later on became Dharm Yudh Morcha of Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. And when you talk of Amritpal Singh, which is happening now,
I mean, it's interesting that you talk about this very important Sikh leader. There are a lot of similarities that people are putting between him and Amritpal Singh. Why is that?
Yeah, exactly. That is the kind of fear. Because two things have happened. One is that after, let's say, 84, you go through Operation Blue Star, how they were basically their Makkah Medina was attacked. As far as Sikhs were concerned, Akal Takht was their Makkah Medina. So there was desecration of holy sites and then assassination of Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. And now the Sikh youth, especially the diaspora, has given him the status of a saint. He's called Saint Sant Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale Shaheed. So that's the kind of legend he's become for the Sikh youth.
Is Amritpal Singh going to become another such legend? Do we fear his persecution or his killing in some kind of operation?
Yeah, maybe, but they have to be very, very careful because the kind of support he's getting from within Indian Punjab as well as Sikh diaspora is enormous. And probably this thing is again echoing that probably we have another son, Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, because he openly talks of it. He talks of their right to exist as a separate state, and he says what's wrong, come and discuss on the media what's wrong with discussing on Khalistan. Now what happened in 84 was that at time people forget, a lot of people left India, and I would say the parents who were prosecuted, their next generation now mostly settled in Canada, UK, Australia, most of North America, and even I think some parts.
And that is where the referendum is happening.
Yes, that's where the referendum. So one, they can recall atrocities committed to their earlier generation. The other is now they become very, very, I would say, aware of their rights, of their culture, and if you even look at Sikh folklore, I think they arrested some of the Sikh singers during farmers' protests also, if you recall. And farmer protests.
And they were also on the forefront when it comes to the farmers' protest.
Exactly. And in farmer protests also, although there were jars from Haryana, but mostly it was by the Sikh farmers. And then what happened, they took on Moody, who is a Mako man or a man with 56 in chest, and they made sure that the laws are amended. So this is a big jolt which I think came to the RSS, and it was basically Sikh community which were leading. So in case this translates into a political struggle, so it becomes.
But hasn't it already translated into a political struggle?
Yeah, it is. But on the other side, if you look at Indians like their political governments, whether it was Congress or it is now I think the Aam Aadmi Party or BJP. So basically they do this stick and carrot policy. On one side they offer incentives. There's another interesting thing is economic downfall of Indian Punjab. This was the breadbasket of India. And if you compare in terms of let's say GDP, Punjab was in the first 5 states of India at let's say about a decade back. Now they have slid to below 20. So I think even Mizoram is doing better. Haryana is now in the first 5. So it also means that there is economic targeting of Sikh community of Punjab. So I think that is another reason. Then there is a case of issue of drugs, which I think were deliberately injected.
But that is also something that Amritpal Singh is fighting against.
Yes, exactly. Because he can feel that the Sikh youth is being made, let's say is being bewildered and then put into drugs. And so basically it's economic ostracization of Sikh community also. Even if you look at the law which was passed for minimum price support. Basically, it was Sikh farmers community which were targeted. But hats off to them. They, I think, they sieged Delhi from two sides, and it took about 9 months to 10 months. A lot of people died, a lot of old farmers died, but they made sure that the laws are reversed, and that is one thing I think which has hurt Modi the most.
All right. Do you feel this movement that now has been launched by Amritpal Singh and is gaining momentum, it could be crushed by the Indian forces?
I think they'll have to be very, very careful, because now it's not 1984 that you could let's say blind the media and then of course conduct such a big operation. So one, I think they should be very, very careful, because in case Sikhs, because if you look at Sikhs, Eastern Punjab strategic location, it's a very sensitive area. One, it borders Pakistan. The other, it also borders the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So, so that's a kind of relationship. So in case there is upheaval, or there is something, there is instability in East Punjab, India, I think strategically cannot afford it. So maybe they'll try to, like I think there was one Sikh leader, a youngster from UK who was arrested for, I think, almost 2 years have passed and nothing has happened. So most probably he'll be incarcerated, and then there'll be a lot of legal cases. They'll bring in NIA and they'll bring in enforcement
even in India there are around 100 Sikh activists that have been arrested by the Indians, by the Indian forces. But the fact remains that this movement is gaining momentum with every passing day, and that is because of the wave that was created by Amritpal Singh since quite some time. And he, of course, since he's returned to India from Dubai, he has only talked about the youth and talked about genuine rights of the people, and that is maybe what India is afraid of. Just like they are afraid of the Muslim leaders in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, there are so many similarities between the two, and the way they are trying to hamper their basic human rights.
Yes, that's another important factor. Now, because of this digital and social media, now it's very difficult to control the narrative. And if you look at Sikh diaspora, in North America, Australia, or Europe, so they are very much part of this movement. And the other fear is that in case Sikhs and Muslim, the struggle. Even if you take the almost 200 million to 250 million Muslims in mainland India, let's say they get into the same wave, so it becomes a huge problem for India. The other thing is there's always talk in India that there is a majority suppressing the minorities, whereas it's other way around. You look at Mandal Commission report, 23% is the majority. That's the Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vesh, and rest 77% is the majority, being divided and ruled by this minority. But they, because if you look at Shudra or Dalits and Muslims, so that becomes almost Christians, Sikhs, it is almost 77% of India. So that's again, that
is what they're afraid of, basically.
Yeah. So if the minorities, so-called minorities rise, even the Adivasis, a similar problem they have, I think, in Assam, which is suppression of Muslims taking place. In the south, they've come up with the bogey of Tipu Sultan being some ruthless leader. So there's a movie which is coming up, because Karnataka election is taking place, I think, after 2 months. So it's basically divide and rule, and they don't want any community to come up and let's say raise their voice for their rights, because it is considered a threat to Indian security.
Do you feel India is using this internet shutdown since the last 4 days as a weapon of control and shields of impunity?
Definitely. But I think if you have curbs on social media, it's practically impossible, because there will be definitely sites working from outside India, the message is going in, and I think if you look at the shutdown of internet and the curbs on the digital and other media, India is probably the leading nation in the world.
There have been reports on that.
Yeah, they have been. So I think the human rights organizations, the organizations of Genocide Watch, they should also come in, and I think there's also our duty, because Sikhs, they feel a lot of strength when Pakistan raises this question, although it's becoming unfashionable. But Pakistan has, because there's a lot of affinity between our Punjab and Indian Punjab. Their holy sites, half of the holy sites are located here. And when this border was opened, the Kartarpur, the threat was foreseen by RSS that now there is going to be
more contact between the two.
Yeah. So these are some of the factors that despite their all efforts, I don't think so it's going to work. And I'm sure the more they suppress, the more it's going to spread.
Do you feel there are more and more chances of some kind of a grand operation against the Sikh community on the same pattern as the 1984 operation? And if you say that because of the change of times, it can't be possible, do you feel some kind of huge event might happen to persecute or to assassinate Amritpal Singh?
Now, as far as I have been following, and at times go into their spaces, the Sikh spaces and spaces done by the, let's say, RSS activists, there is a lot of call on that. People are talking of openly, another Operation Blue Star. They feel that he is the next Janay Singh Bhindra. So in the social media discourse, and even in mainstream media, if you look at NDTV, if you look at Republic TV and other, Hindi channels, so there is, a kind of, I would say, discrete kind of call for this operation, because that is the way media is pushing. But on ground, I think it will be very, very difficult, and it will definitely boomerang on Indian government's face or Modi's face.
Let's talk about the Khalistan movement, the referendum that has been going on. We saw what happened in Australia. We also saw how the Indian government was extremely displeased with the Australian government to have let the referendum happen. We know the next phase is happening in Sydney in a couple of months' time. We also know what happened at the Indian High Commission in the United Kingdom, where their flag was, there was a vandalism, and the Indian flag was taken out by some youth, and that was also something that was taken up by the Indian authorities. Do you feel that there is a genuine distrust or mistrust in the Indian government by the Indian expatriates themselves?
Yes, it is, because since Modi has come, it's almost now, I think 10 years will be completed in 2024. This has accentuated, because it was the first time that RSS-led cadres in North America, Australia and Europe became very, very active. And so the community...
You remember the Howdy Modi?
Exactly, Howdy Modi. And now if you look at the symbolic value of, Indian flag being removed from the Indian High Commission building.
It's very symbolic.
It's very, very symbolic. So definitely there is a fear. And worst thing is that this poison against, other communities is now spread into Indian diaspora, which claims to be, very, very modern. And they claim that they own, these social media giants like Facebook, because they have their CEOs.
But they have someone who's of Indian origin in every single nook and corner of the digital community.
True. But I think it's going to be a tough fight. And in diaspora, they need to actually now join the forces. Let's say Muslim community, Pakistani Muslim community, Kashmiri community and Sikh community.
Yeah, you need to join hands.
Yeah, if they can join, I think they've been doing it, especially in London. In case there is a Kashmir Day, you'll find, Sikhs joining that and vice versa. So I think that is very important to put pressure on Indian government, and the genuine demands of Sikh community must be met. But I think we have to see how it comes, because in June we have the next anniversary of Operation Blue Star. So things are, I think, going to heat
towards
up.
that, basically.
Yeah.
Amritpal Singh's outfit, Waris Punjabi, or his movement, or the faith that people have in him, what do you foresee in the coming months? I mean, you just talked about June being the anniversary of Operation Blue Star. Around these coming weeks, what do you think is going to happen as far as the Sikh community in India is concerned?
Yeah, if the Indian government mishandles it, and there are chances, so there are chances of untoward accidents, and let's say they go for full-fledged suppression, I feel that this wave is going to pick up. If you look at Nihang Sikhs, those are very, very, I would say, conservative Sikhs. They still carry the swords, and at time, in case there is something, desecration, they would even use that sword. So Nihang Sikhs are very active, and now they've started relating it to Khalistan movement. This is the first time that these yellow flags are now coming up openly. Otherwise, it used to be, on the anniversary of Operation Blue Star, around Akal Takht or wherever I think Janay Singh Bhindra wale Samadhi is located. So, but now it's becoming, in every town, village and city, especially in Indian Punjab. There's also a question of Sikhs working in other states, especially in the south. Like in Bangalore, there were a lot of Sikhs who would work, and there have been serious tensions between Bhakts and I would say even educated people from the RSS and Sikhs. So it's now becoming very, very common to remove their turbans or drag them in the streets, and even the law enforcement agencies are joining. Same thing happened with Muslims in Delhi riots. A lot of Muslims were killed under the supervision of police. And here also we find same pattern happening in other states, especially in the south and the cow belt, like Gujarat, Rajasthan, then you have Madhya Pradesh, and then even Uttar Pradesh, because Western Pradesh, a lot of Muslims and Sikh community do the farming business. So it's going to be, I think, interesting situation, and we would actually advise Indian government to, listen to the voice of reason and listen to genuine demands. But I doubt
this is interesting when you say that, Brigadier WAQAR. How can you, tell the Indians to listen to the voice of reason when they haven't listened to the voice of reason emanating from the Indian-held valley?
Yeah, that's true. That's unfortunate, but I'm sure if Khalistan movement picks up, it's going to give a fillip to.
It has already picked up.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to. It's, I think, going to give a booster to the Kashmiris as well. And in case these two areas, I even talk of relief zones. You know, I've written also in one of the articles that now the minorities or the majority actually will have to look at the relief zone. So there are areas outside Cow Belt or the Hindutva belt. Like you have northwest India, which includes, you know, Punjab, Haryana and occupied Kashmir, western Uttar Pradesh. And the south you have Kerala, Karnataka, and eastern seaboard is Bengal and Assam. So these are relief zones where you have a very large chunk of Muslim population. So maybe at some stage, you know, the minorities decide, and even Dalits can be offered a relief zone. So 2 or 3, you know, countries can come up where, and they'll be in almost half of India. So they can have their relief zones where they can really have, I think, all kind of rights and development. So even Sikhs are now talking of, you know, when they say of, you know, autonomy, there is the Chenab formula also, which is the Confederation of Chenab. So it again is Indian occupied Kashmir, Indian Punjab and Haryana, and even Pakistani area. This can become a relief zone for a lot of, I think, minorities. So which is, I think, a long shot, but maybe things gradually. I pray that Modi stays till 2030. And maybe, you know, these minorities finally get some relief zones.
Finally get what they deserve in the way of their due rights being accepted. But I don't see that happening, especially if Modi gains power again in 2024, which I feel is the wave that is going along in India, that he's going to win the elections this time as well. Thank you so very much, Brigadier Retired WAQAR HASAN Khan Saab, analyst, to have joined us, to have talked to us in candid detail about the past, present and probable future of this movement that is now being led by Amritpal Singh of Waris Punjab there, and how a lot of followers are believing in what he's saying, because he's saying what the people want, what the people are in genuine need of. And with India curtailing the voices of the Sikhs in the form of internet clampdowns or you know, arresting the hundreds of Sikhs in India, this is, I don't think, is going to stop this movement to any extent. In fact, it's going to give more impetus to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's come to our second segment that concerns the relationship that Pakistan and the People's Republic of China have and have had since the last few decades. The third part of the meeting was held in China between the two sides, and it was a very fruitful meeting. There have been many important projects that both the countries have had together, the Cpec being one of the major ones. What is the future of the relationship or the cooperation between both countries? More in the following report.
China-Pakistan eternal friendship manifests ideal case of interstate relations, as the two nations have stood firmly side by side in realizing their shared vision of peace and development. The third round of Pakistan-China bilateral politics consultations, a regular institutional mechanism between the two brotherly countries, was held in Beijing. Pakistan and China have reviewed the entire spectrum of bilateral relations and expressed resolve to enhance ties in diverse sectors, the Foreign Office said in a statement. The two sides agreed to expand and reinforce political and security cooperation, bilateral trade, economic and financial cooperation, cultural exchanges, tourism and people-to-people ties. 2023 sets the 10th year of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, and both sides reaffirmed their commitment to Cpec, that remained a major pillar of bilateral cooperation and a symbol of ever-deepening friendship between Pakistan and China. The way globalization led by China has helped pull more than 1 billion people out of poverty, in Pakistan the Cpec initiatives has opened many vistas of employment. The Cpec activities were initially focused on improvement in infrastructure and energy projects to help create favorable conditions for development. Next phase critically is being crafted more towards agriculture sector development, socio-economic projects, as well as forging an academic partnership for improved R&D collaboration. Pakistan is looking for further strengthening the ties with China and looks for Chinese support to navigate difficult phase.
Mustafa Haider Syed, who's the Executive Director of Pakistan-China Institute, joins us online. Mustafa, thank you very much to have joined us. It's always a pleasure to talk of Pakistan and China with you, who understands this robust relationship much more efficiently than I do, at least. The third round of Pak-China bilateral political consultations were recently held in Beijing. What has been the key outcome of this dialogue?
This was a very important timing of this dialogue, time when we are seeing big power competition and a changing regional scenario, both in terms of geopolitics, in terms of economic shift from the west to the east, and also the recreation of an architecture of the post-pandemic world order, as I call it. So if you look at the readout between the both sides, which was led by Sun Weidong, the vice minister from China, and from the foreign secretary from Pakistan side, there is an economic dimension, which involves the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Then there is the economic dimension, which is assistance of Chinese financial institutions to Pakistan in this time of economic crisis. And then there is political support to Pakistan's territorial sovereignty. So it's a what I would say a all-inclusive dialogue that has taken place, and we see that China has reinforced their vote of confidence in Pakistan at a time when certain countries, or there's speculation, or there's rumors, or that certain multilateral institutions or certain countries are talking about, questioning the sanctity of our, certain institutions that we have, or certain military defense mechanisms that we have, and our staff level agreement has also been slightly delayed. So at that time, China has, as it has in the past, consistently shown that whether it's rain, whether it's shine, whether it's whatever the situation, we are there for Pakistan.
Amongst the different topics of discussion in this third round of political consultations were, as you pointed out, economy, but also political and security cooperation, cultural exchanges, tourism, and people-to-people ties. Although these are, these are things that we can talk about for hours as far as you are concerned, because you understand this perfectly. What, in your point of view, has Pakistan's approach been of high-level engagements with the Chinese and political and business leadership, and what should it now be under the current geostrategic and geopolitical environment?
That's a very good question, Omar Sahab. I think that Pakistan's engagement with China has been consistently at all different levels. We've had traditionally a high-level government-to-government relationship with exchanges of presidents, prime ministers, state visits. At the same time, we've had ministerial mechanisms, like we have the Joint Coordination Committee for the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Then we have, now we have a defense mechanism where we saw that the services chiefs went and had a dialogue with the People's Liberation Army. Then we have commerce level, of course, ties. And then we have a very strong people-to-people relationship where the friendship is actually rooted within the common public of both sides. And this was actually attested to, very interestingly, by a Pew poll, which you know as the leading data collecting think tank of in the United States, PEW, which does sampling and polling like Gallup does in Pakistan. But this is a more international level, where they did a survey of which country is the most popular in Pakistan. And Pakistani said China. And in China, it was Russia and Pakistan. So I think that this is very important, that the people-to-people ties and people-to-people connectivity sometimes is slightly underrated. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of young generation Pakistanis don't know the importance of the Pakistan-China relationship. And we, a lot of the times, fall prey to the propaganda and fake news regarding China, whether it's Xinjiang, whether it's debt. And because we are fed through mainstream news, media, internationally, a certain particular narrow perspective. So I think this people-to-people ties is very important, particularly I would advocate, since Omar, you and I are still considered a part of the young generation, if I might say so, choosing to go east for higher education, whether it's PhD, whether it's graduate studies, whether it's undergraduate. We always look west. But I feel that there are fantastic programs now in countries like China, where we can actually go
We've got scores of students who are doing their PhDs in China as we speak. I've got lots of friends who are there and who are extremely, who are quite happy with the form of education that they are getting. Let's come back to the political consultations. The third round was held today. First round was held in 2018. What developments have you seen from 2018 to 2023 under the ambit of these bilateral political consultations?
We've seen that, well, 2018 it was held, and then late 2019, early 2021, the world changed with the COVID-19 pandemic and everything went kaput. But we have seen that a natural trajectory has been forged, Omar Saab, of a more intertwined convergence of our interests with China. And that has played out and evolved because of how the interstate relations in our region and neighborhood have evolved. I'll give you an example. Within this 2018 to 2023, we saw Ladakh happen, which was a big Ladakh, and we saw what happened there. And within this period, we have seen that there has been, particularly actually very recently, the elevation of the US-India strategic bilateral partnership. Now it's called Special Strategic Partnership, where there's now research, cooperation on semiconductors, 5G, and space cooperation. So as we see that these relationships evolve and come together, we see that our convergence with China has also become more closer, both economically, politically, militarily. And I still feel, sir, that these consultations that have been happening since 2018, we still have vacuum and opportunity and room to benefit more from China. Whether it is green technology,
well, you talked of economy, Mustafa. Let's talk about Cpec. It's the 10th year of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, and what a fruitful cooperation it has been between the two sides as far as this giant, part of the BRI is concerned. Now, I would like to refer to the statement that came after this third round of political consultation. Both sides, quote unquote, reaffirmed their commitment to Cpec, agreed to remain engaged in the expansion of Cpec, and also enhance high-level engagements and dialogue mechanisms and make the channels of communication more robust. Which are the mechanisms do you feel this can happen through? Which do you feel
I think that are the ideal for you? I think that when we talk about the regional challenges that our countries are facing, particularly Pakistan and China, we need to have a more rapid and immediate coordination mechanism, because the world is now requiring robust responses. We cannot depend on traditional mechanisms of diplomacy that we have relied upon since day one. The world has changed. We were just learning yesterday, we were seeing chat GPT, and artificial intelligence is at its peak. We need, if our convergence and of shared interests is so much, and we have opportunities and challenges, Omar Saab, the mechanisms of diplomacy that we have right now need to be upgraded. They need to be more efficient, more swifter, and it has to go beyond dialogues which are every few months. It has to be a more faster, institutionalized, and higher level mechanism of responding to challenges.
I think that I totally agree with you, Mustafa. But I think economy is one of the major, areas of cooperation that Pakistan needs to tap into. You yourself have said that there are so many avenues that have yet to be, taken account of. Pakistan and China, strong economic relationship. We've seen that over the years. What are the avenues do you feel, in your point of view, could be tapped into to further strengthen this collaboration?
I think there are two very important things that we need to talk about when we talk about economic cooperation. One is we already have a free trade agreement, part 2, which was negotiated with by the very able Secretary Commerce at that time, Mr. Yunus Daga. And that gives us a lot of access into the Chinese market. But somehow, we have our manufacturers and our exporters have been unable to take advantage of that market access. Our exports, the way they should have surged, have not surged, frankly speaking. And we do have a balance of trade deficit with China. We import more than we export to China. And I think we have that all-rounded problem, not limited to China, but we need to take advantage of the Chinese market, which I think is 1/4 of the world. And they are very kindly giving us that access. Number one. Number two, Umar Saab, we have a grand opportunity. We have 3 SEZs, Rashakai, Dhabeji, and Nama Iqbal Industrial Park, as we know. Chinese have said we are willing, and Gwadar Industrial Zone, we are willing to relocate industry here. Just give us one window solution, give us a fast track. Our businessmen will come here. The cost of production is cheaper in Pakistan. We will produce in Pakistan, and we will export to other countries, including Pakistan market and other countries. To be very frank, we have been unable to deliver on those SEZs. We have not been able to meet the expectations of the Chinese investors. Hence, they are going to Bangladesh, they are going to Cambodia, and forget Asian countries, Ethiopia, they are exporting $350 million from an industrial zone, just from an industrial zone in Ethiopia, which the Chinese have made. So now even African countries, I don't mean to sound politically incorrect, but even countries like Ethiopia are successfully modeling these SEZs and taking advantage of Chinese industries which want to relocate. Because the Human Development Index and GDP per capita of China has increased, the wages, the salaries of people have increased, the costs of production have increased, they need to move to emerging markets like Pakistan. But we have not been able to do it. And on top of that, the icing on the cake, the security situation. They say our lives are more important than profits. So we need to clean up our house a little bit, do some house cleaning, Umar Saab, so we can increase our exports and earn some foreign exchange, and we don't have to go to IMF with our palms open.
All right. Mustafa, you talked of security. Let's also talk about one of the important topics that was discussed during this bilateral political consultations was Afghanistan. Now, both the sides expressed satisfaction, quote unquote, over their close cooperation and engagement on important regional developments, including in Afghanistan. How important is Afghanistan, peace, stability in Afghanistan for both Pakistan and China?
Integral. Afghanistan is integral for China because of Xinjiang. A stable Afghanistan is a prerequisite for stability in Xinjiang and that whole belt of Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. Because as you know, in the past, the ETIM, which is a terrorist organization and has launched attacks in the past in China and was affiliated with Al-Qaeda, was housed and had sanctuaries in Afghanistan. Similarly, the IMU, Independence Movement for Uzbekistan, which had Uzbek militants, was also in Afghanistan. So as you know, Afghanistan was a great summer camp for these organizations. Now, there's a very key security component, number one. And same for Pakistan. As you know, we have some security concerns in Afghanistan. There have been attacks from there in the past. And recently also there has been some because of the porous border. Secondly, Cpec. As you know, there's a joint working group on international cooperation, which means third parties, third countries can join Cpec. Even though the Afghan government is a very weak government and it doesn't have much going for it economically, the land area of Afghanistan is a natural extension for connectivity because ultimately Central Asia and that route and the WAQAR corridor can prove very, very natural extension as a natural partner for Cpec if you want to expand. And for commerce, for logistics, for shorter trade routes, shorter freight, shorter logistics, cheaper logistics. So this is a two-pronged, I think, convergence of interest. One is economic and second is security. So there has been traditionally very close cooperation and coordination on Afghanistan prior to Afghanistan, which is now there. Even in the past, it has been very close shared foreign policy of China and Pakistan towards Afghanistan. And I think as Afghanistan has been left by the United States, the cooperation, coordination vis-a-vis Afghanistan is even more important and closer. And that's why Mr. Wang Yu, the ambassador of China to Afghanistan, was actually the consul general in Karachi. So he knows both Pakistan and Afghanistan very well, and now he's, of course, in Kabul. So I think this is integral, Afghanistan's stability for both our countries.
Is focusing and planning to encourage regional prosperity through investment in technology. There have been 14 NPC sessions. The new initiative of Global Security Initiative, how is this going to benefit countries such as Pakistan?
So the Global Security Initiative, Global Development Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative has one common thread, Omar, that is globalization, multilateralism. And Global Security Initiative also says that there should be a minimum common denominator, a bare minimum area of convergence where all countries of all hues and cry with different interests can cooperate on a bare minimum consensus and common denominator. When we talk about Global Security Initiative, it's not what only comes to our mind, nukes and Ukraine. Global Security Initiative is also human security.
True.
What the pandemic has waged on the human race, I think no other conflict has in recent history. So this architecture that President Xi is redrawing is based and premised on multilateral cooperation, as opposed to a unipolar or a bipolar sort of a prism, not a zero-sum prism. And Global Security Initiative can help Pakistan by actually helping it strengthen its partnerships and take advantage of the wide network of partnerships that China has. As we know, international relations is all about multilateral mechanisms. Shanghai Cooperation Organization is there, SCO is there, ASEAN is there. Pakistan should piggyback, I would say, and I will say it unapologetically, on these excellent, amazing platforms which are there because of China, and do commerce, do trade, and make money. It's time for us to look at these mechanisms from an economic lens and not get insecure that our sovereignty will be challenged if we go into that country or if some investor comes into our country.
All right, I think that's a very good idea, and it's a good explanation that you've just given. And we just hope, that this relationship that we've seen and prosper over the last decades continues to strengthen, despite all the negativity that is emanating from certain quarters, despite all the disinformation that is emanating from certain quarters, that both Pakistan and China understand that this negative information is deliberate, and that both sides have a passion to be together, to work together, to strengthen each other. And of course, we've seen how China has been on Pakistan's side in the good and in the bad times. Of course, the recent examples being in the very, very recent past. Thank you very much, MUSTAFA HYDER, Syed, Executive Director, Pakistan-China Institute, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this beautiful, robust relationship that exists between Pakistan and the People's Republic of China in the context of the third bilateral political consultations that were recently held in Beijing. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first, a very good initiative by the current government. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Sahab has launched a teleschool Pakistan application, One School for All. Today, he has stressed that all resources and efforts need to be utilized to introduce modern modes of education, including the digitalization initiatives, besides imparting latest training to the teachers. Teacher training, of course, is also something that he emphasized during this launching ceremony of the Telescope Pakistan application. He said that he had directed steps to improve the quality of about 40 training centers in the province during his tenure as a chief minister. He also observed, and of course, this whole initiative of the Telescope Pakistan application is excellent for those who want to learn while being at home, for all the children who might not have direct access to education, and this gives that opportunity to them to do however they can. There have been so many initiatives that have been launched in this government and previously also when PMLN was in power, whether it be the laptop scheme, whether it be the other schemes, also the vocational training program that the Prime Minister has said will be taken forward. So a lot of good initiatives, and of course the biggest one is the Telescope Pakistan application. And let's come to our last story, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns also a positive news, the current account deficit that has declined by 68% to $3.8 billion US for the first 8 months of the current fiscal year, from $12 billion US during the same period last year. The month of February showed a healthy sign as the current account deficit fell to just 74 million against 519 million US last year, the lowest monthly deficit that was recorded since February of the year 2021. Deficit has declined by 86% on a year-on-year basis. The decline is of course in part due to a fall in imports, while no longer higher exports or inflows have been recorded. Good news as far as Pakistan's economy is concerned. We hope that in the coming days we'll be hearing much more news from the IMF's front, as we've just shown you in the news before my show started, that they are quite satisfied by the way Pakistan has moved forward as far as their preconditions were. And of course we've got countries such as China that always have our back in the good and in the bad times. So we look forward to good times ahead economically and politically as well. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.